For those of you guys just coming in, welcome. We're going to hold off just a couple more minutes until 5 o'clock. But in the meantime, if you can go ahead and drop your name and where you're from into the chat so we can see who's joining us tonight, that would be great. Okay, Patty, go on ahead.
Welcome everyone to Caprid Core Zoom presentations. My name is Patty Supay and I am honored to be this year's Caprid President. I hope that you are enjoying these valuable presentations hosted by Caprid. Under these unprecedented times, many outstanding educators are working with professional organizations such as Caprid and Shape America to provide teachers with quality professional development and resources that they need to transition into distance learning. Although these presentations are being offered for free right now, we need to realize that organizations such as Caprid are not free to operate. As your professional organization, Caprid works to ensure that our teachers have the resources they need, and we work hard every day to advocate at the state and national level to ensure that our jobs are protected. Remember that behind the scene work is done every day by dedicated volunteers, such as those putting on this presentation today, and this work relies on your membership. If you're not a member, please consider joining. If your colleagues are not members, encourage them to join. Our job depends on it. Because when Minute Requirements return to California, it will be because of the hard work of Caprid. And for those of you outside of California that are joining us, we welcome you and ask that you too join your state organization and Shape America to keep quality physical education and health education in our schools. Today's presentation is the fourth of 5 presentations of our week-long tech series and our 6th presentation in the Back to School series. So far, the feedback has been incredible. Remember, you can still access these past presentations through Caprid YouTube channel. Today, we are hosting Mike Schaefer. Mike teaches physical education in 2 elementary schools in Fullerton and is a specialist in measuring student learning for physical education, whether virtually or at school. During this session, we will look at quiz tools, Kahoots, and Quizizz to measure student learning and to learn about these apps with a Nearpod lesson, checking for understanding along the way. Each of these tools gives you data for all your participating students at assessment and documents knowledge in an engaging way at school, online, or in a hybrid setting. So here you go, Mike.
Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and get my screen up here for everybody. As I'm doing that, hello. Looks like the screen's up there. So we're going to be doing a bunch of playing today, hopefully. So if you have another device handy, it could just be your cell phone, it could be an iPad, it could be another window on your computer. A lot of what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the teacher side of things, and you'll have a chance to play around with what it would look like for your students and see how that goes. So we're going to follow a format. We'll do a short quiz at the beginning. Here's a link to my presentation. You can follow along with that. And then again, if you want to grab another device. So we'll start off introducing myself, go over some things, and then be practicing with Kahoot. Kahoot is an online quiz tool that's been around for a while. So we'll look at that. Initially, I had planned to do this entire presentation in Nearpod, but I wanted to be able to show a little bit more with things. So this slide deck will help you follow along with things. Google Forms is another amazing tool. And when I heard, okay, I have to teach digitally, I have a bunch of elementary students, how can I track that? Google Forms has been a big one for me. So we'll touch on that. And Matt Bassett, who's a huge member on Cape Bird with the technology, has some great tutorials we'll offer. And then we'll leave you with a Quizizz that kind of is a way to capture learning, can be used at the beginning or at the end, but is just a nice tool to have to check in with people. And I think that has a lot more options for things. So again, you can follow along with the presentation right down here, and we'll get going. So a little bit about me. I teach in Fullerton, California. I'm originally from Minnesota, so some very big, happy Minnesota roots. But I'm happy to be out here, especially in the winter when I get to wear shorts and teach PE outside. That's pretty fantastic when there's inclement weather and it's not built for handling inclement weather and we have to go inside. I don't love it so much, but happy to be out here. And join my family. I met my wife in college. We have two little kids, Kate, who started kindergarten this week, and Mason, who's 4. So they have the run of the house. I'm presenting from my bedroom and doing that at-home working life here. I enjoy working with kids. I teach elementary PE, like I said, at 2 schools. Each school is about 600 students. Rolling Hills has a really big multi-age program. So they have a couple of grade levels that are together. For PE, they'll come out together. So I'm thankful to have aides that help support me with that. So we can do some different rotations with them. Richmond is a Title I school. Enjoy being there. I live in that neighborhood, so that's been a lot of fun. And below here is kind of my mission statement. I used to say I want to give students amazing opportunities to be active, but as I've been teaching, having some great conversations with people around Cape Bird and in my area, I say I really want students to develop a meaningful bond. So hopefully they enjoy it, are connected, find value in being active, and that supports them to be well for their entire life. You can read a little bit more about me and what we like to do. Hopefully today you'll get some ideas you can have for your toolbox. It may not be, all of these may not fit exactly what you need to do, or you may be here because you've been told, hey, we're doing distance learning and this is what you need to do. This is the tools that we're going to be using. So hopefully you can find some. I love finding resources and ideas for things. I was meeting with my elementary PE team today and said, hey, here's a spot to dump all your ideas, all the different things you might be talking about for lessons. So we have that together. And I think I was more excited than everybody else, but I love ideas and resources. And some of these things I learned about years ago and tried to do it. It didn't go well. And then as teachers I work with have implemented more technology, I've been able to bring those back. Some of them I've just pushed through and tried to pioneer, and we've rolled with it. So use what you need to and make it work for you. But again, hopefully you can get some very different ideas. What we're covering, kind of going with the what, why, and how teacher standpoint, we're covering some technology-driven assessment and ways to track student participation, which is a big part of what we're required to do now. So Kahoot, if you click on that, it takes you to the website. Quizizz, the same. Those are quiz, gamified, game-based programs that students can input their names. You can get reports from it. Nearpod, similar, students will put in their names and you can get reports from it, checking their participation. You can have a bunch of different kinds of questions that go along with a presentation. So we'll be explaining that more. And then Google Forms can be used for everything, to checking in at the end of the week, giving them a spot to put in journal prompts, and it'll fill into a Google Sheet at the end of the week instead of looking at a bunch of different documents. Or I've used it for track meet signups, for what kids are interested in, all kinds of different things. Why we're doing this is that with increased learning, distance learning expectations, we need to be instructing students, we need to be checking in with them, and also showing what they are learning, measuring what they know. So hopefully this will be some tools that can help you out with that. At the beginning was my Twitter account. At the end, I have my Twitter and email. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out. This presentation will be on YouTube, so you can check it out again later on. And also we'll be answering some questions at the end. So I'm going to try to power through everything, make sure there's enough time to talk about each of those, and then we'll get to questions at the end if there's specific things you're wondering about. I would say most of these things work best with about second grade and up. I had a day last year where our screen and projector weren't working in the multi-purpose room we had to go into on a rainy day. So we pushed out Nearpod lessons. I converted my nutrition topic that we were going to talk about and put it onto Nearpod. Our school and district is pretty fortunate to have one-to-one iPads for students, so they brought them in and we just presented that way. But with kinder and first, it'd probably be more challenging. The older you get, the faster students will be able to pick up with it. I think junior high would be fantastic, and high school would definitely work as well. So the first one we have is Kahoot. We'll go over kind of the uses for it, what you can do with it. It's gamified, which we'll see very soon. So if you haven't gotten a cell phone or tablet or extra window, make sure you have that handy. It can be used for info gathering. It can be used for assessments. I've done it as a pre-test before our hockey unit. What do you know? Been fortunate to work with the Anaheim Ducks, and they do a street hockey program providing student workbooks. So as we went through the workbook and had instruction playing hockey at PE, I wanted to see what they knew ahead of time, and then was able to give them the same thing at the end. I'm a big fan of having pre-test and post-test match, so that students know what they're going to be measured against for their learning. And also I have apples and apples to compare. I asked the same questions. So that's a great use for it. You can do a check-in during your unit, ask questions. There are pre-made quizzes available. So you can search if you're looking for nutrition, if you're looking for something specifically about carbs or a health topic, or there may even be some dance things. You can use some of the pre-made quizzes. Anytime you get into one of these, especially over distance learning, it helps to have a separate device. When students switch from your Zoom over to something else, then you don't see them anymore. So if that's an issue, that's something that'll come up with all of these. There is a very limited free version. So that's kind of why we're talking about Kahoot at the front. I'd say it's the OG of quiz games for education. It's been around for a long time. But I think with that, they've tried to control some of the things and get you to pay a little bit more. If you pay for it, then there's a lot more question types that you can get. You're also able to do student-paced assignments. So if you're meeting with students one time during the week, but also sending out lessons to them, you could send out a Kahoot and they could work on it during the week as part of their homework assignments. So again, that's part of the paid features. We'll see in a minute, you'll be able to come on and put your name in. Anytime you're doing something like that, I do this projecting up on the front what question we're at or how things are moving along. You can have a leaderboard if that's something you're interested in. but it's a good idea to have appropriate names. My sixth graders have gotten creative sometimes, and it's very easy to remove people and have them try again to make an appropriate name, but it's a good idea to front load them and let them know ahead of time. Make sure you're being appropriate with what we're doing. So I'm gonna exit this presentation a little bit. We'll go over to Kahoot. And this is going to show you a little bit what it looks like making questions. We're not going to spend a ton of time with that. It's great to play around with, but we'll see some of the limitations. Anytime you see the crown on here, that's asking you to pay more for. Here I have a picture. Here I have different answer options. And some of you might be expert students looking ahead to see what the answer is. But you only have a limited number of questions and kinds of questions you can ask. So once you have your quiz or presentation made, then you can go over to run it. So let's exit. And we're going to play. So again, this is where you would see, you would be able to post it to your students, have them work on it at their own pace. And this is where we're going to teach from. So if you have that other device or tablet, you can start going to kahoot.it, KAHOOT.IT. And this is some of the options you can do for running it. You can have music while people are waiting. We'll leave it on the original for now. I'm going to start classic. Team, you could share devices, but classic will make it available for everybody with their own device. It's getting everything together. And now is up. So again, if you go to kahoot.it and put in our code, you'll be able to join. Try along with us. Thanks, Katie. I see Joel, Jackie. I can look through. If I wasn't happy, maybe Matt, put Maddie or some nickname. I can click on a name and cancel them out. You all are doing a good job and I appreciate you being here, so I will not be doing that yet. Awesome. So we have about half the people on here so far. We'll keep going. And one of the things that makes Kahoot kind of interesting is that the questions are going to go up on the screen. So again, having a second device is very helpful with your students. If they're just on an iPad, you're trying to do a Zoom meeting, they would need to try to switch back and forth to see what the question actually is, and then look back at their answer questions. So that's something to keep in mind. With Quizizz, again, it works very similarly, but you're able to do the student-paced options at a free level. So that may be easier to introduce things or set it up to them. And that has the question along with the answer in it. Wait one more minute here. A few more people get in. And then over here, we can lock it and go prevent people from adding or get going. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Our questions will be coming up on the screen. These are a little bit loosely PE related. It may be kind of a pre-quiz so I can see what people know about assessment. And we're going to try to have some different types of questions. So up here, you would be trying to identify the hoop or net that this sport is for. And the faster you answer, the more points you get. That hoop looks very much like a basketball hoop, but without the backboard, means it's for netball, which a handful of you got. I don't understand how it works, but I had the opportunity to go play basketball in Australia in high school, and there were netball courts next to it. I watched a little bit of a game and it was confusing to me, but they play it somehow without a backboard. So shout out to Les and Brandon, LeBron, Joel, Carlos for knowing that one. Another quiz question, which means there's going to be multiple choice. The ball is on which part of the blade on this hockey stick? We can see a lot of answers coming in. We see our time counting down. This is a question I took from my hockey pre-test and post-test to see what my students knew. That is the toe of the stick. Great job. Being from Minnesota, I love hockey. Impressed with all of you Californians, especially if you're down south with me in Southern California. So here we can look at our leaderboard, see how people have been answering, moving up. Again, the faster you answer, the more points you'll get. Nutrition is a big thing in my district. When we're inside, that's what we work on. Here's our question: how many food groups are there? And this is a question I pulled from one of our nutrition activities. If I were teaching an entire lesson for nutrition or preparing this, then I'd try to have more detailed things. And again, is a great way to show at the beginning, are there parts of my nutrition topic I could maybe move a little bit faster through? We all know the food groups. So if I were teaching that, maybe just touch on them, do a quick review, especially from year to year with teaching students. We cover that a little bit more in depth in first and second grade. In third grade, if they have that down, then we're able to move along from it. Then get our updates on the leaderboard. It's changing up, so we got some people getting on there. We're adding a little competition and fun. Here we have a different kind of question: true or false? Physical education is meeting needs during distance learning. If you're here, I hope you agree with us. We'll see what people think in 2, 1, and it's over. I'd say it absolutely is. I know my daughter sitting at her desk in her room wants to wiggle around, wants to change how she's sitting. During stretch breaks, she comes out and says, "Dad, let's stretch and reach over and do jumping jacks." And I think it's an amazing time to be a physical educator with all the research that keeps coming out that moving is good for your body and good for your body over the long term, and especially good for your mind when it comes to stress and depression and anxiety. It's great when it comes to focusing. I used to think, no, it's not brain breaks. Like, my content isn't a break from what you're doing. It's valuable, it's important. And then Mike Kuczala was at Caperd conference a couple years ago and said he came up with the term. So I said, he's on my team. It's brain breaks. I'll go along with that. But moving is so good for our bodies and especially our mind, being able to focus and being able to help our mental health. Our last question, we're going to be going up on here. Is again trying to gather some information as we're getting started with something. Do you feel confident using at least one form of tech to give assessments? Some of you may feel like a soccer game in snow, a little bit out of place, not the way it should be. That's okay. That's what we're here to cover and help you with. Awesome. So a lot of you have some familiarity with some of these. Hopefully you can get some new tricks or tips with it. One thing that I do want to highlight with this is that with doing Kahoot, I like to use the free option for stuff. I don't like to pay for extra things. I'll try to find grants if there's something I get really excited about. So in the free version with Kahoot, we're limited to true and false and multiple choice questions. So that's how we were able to phrase it. I'll ask a similar question in Quizizz at the end, and you'll see some of the differences. So here we can see our leaderboard. Number 1, Jess was up here earlier. Janie or Janie, sorry if I mispronounced your name. Congratulations, getting up to the top there. Great job. So then once we finish, as we said, these are tools and tools in our tool belt we can use, or toolbox, to see what students know. So once we finish up, we can look at the percentage of answers that were correct. We can look at the difficult questions. People weren't very familiar with netball. So if I were teaching, trying to present topics at the beginning, that lets me know this is something we need to cover a little bit more. If it's with nutrition, something I thought we had covered, then I definitely would want to make sure I go back to help my students with that. 14% correct. Again, I was limited with true and false, so that kind of made it challenging. A lot of you felt comfortable with at least one, so that's great to see. Over here, we can go over to get a full report. I don't think anybody put their full first and last name and district email address, so hopefully this isn't too incriminating, but I want to show you what it can look like at the back end. So we finished. We can look through for the questions a little bit more. We can also get the player results. So I can go through Janie, again, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it, finished number 1. Lisa did great. Can go down. Then we get to about 60%. Going down more, we can see if students left anything left off, didn't answer anything, and then see their final score for the points. We can look specifically at questions. So maybe you're presenting something for the week, students are working on it, then you can go in and see what you might need to touch on during your in-person time for the next week. So that's Kahoot. Again, we're going to try to power through a bunch of things, cover our topics, and then we'll get some questions at the end, hopefully. That is our Kahoot. Coming back in here, we're going to take a look at Nearpod, and I'm going to leave it presenting this way instead of all the way presenting in the full screen mode so we can look at some of the features of it. So Nearpod, their main highlight is that it's an interactive instructional tool. You can use PowerPoints and Google Slides that you've already made, which is very, very handy. There's a lesson library that has a mix of free and lessons that you can pay for. So you can look for something, any lesson that you have, you're able to make your own. Our district this year ran a summer school program and the lessons were on Nearpod so that students could work at their own pace for it. I was able to tailor it a little bit if there was anything I wanted to change with it. So that's a great aspect of Nearpod. Some of the notes, the pricing at the free level, you get 100 megabytes of storage, not a lot of space. For $10, you get 1 gigabyte and some more features. So that may be something to keep in mind as far as storing things on there. Our district has gone big into that, and I know some others have during this time. So that's gives you all the options to use. If you're editing things in Nearpod, it's really limited. It's worse than the original PowerPoint backgrounds that you could choose from. There's only a handful that you're able to use. And I think it just makes presentations look pretty gross. So I would especially recommend getting an add-on in your slides. You can go to the Nearpod, open it that way, and create things here. When you create it in your slides, you're able to integrate all these different options that you would be using in Nearpod, but you're able to get a lot more design features, which I'm really excited about. There's also an extension for Google Chrome so that you can integrate these directly into Google Classroom. When we go through it, I have a student paste option that you guys can click through on your own time. You go to the join.nearpod.com and follow along with it. We'll go through a live lesson a little bit in just a minute. But that, again, is a way you can put it in your Google Classroom Monday. By Friday, they need to be finished with it, and you can check in and see how they're doing with it. So before we get into an actual Nearpod, I'm going to show a little bit with some of the design aspects of it with making the presentation here. So this is a presentation I've traditionally given to my students in person, talking about snacks with our 3rd and 4th graders. We have our health standards that it goes along with for our objectives. Traditionally, I would ask them we would just go to this slide and they'd look at different things. I'd have them talk with a partner. If I'm going to be more at a distance or giving it student paced, then I created a short quiz of a few questions to see what do they remember about the different food groups, the different nutrients and the benefits for their bodies. What are snacks? In person, we'd talk about it, or maybe I'd ask some students to raise their hand. On Nearpod, I'm gonna take a poll and see what they think beginning with it. Then we'll cover some of the content about what a healthy or unhealthy snack is. And then we have a game that we do. So in person, we'd have 2 different foods up on the screen. They would choose one or the other. It looks just like this. So I've had them move to the other side of the room, stand up, sit down, raise your right hand, raise your left hand, all different kinds of things. With Nearpod, I was able to make a poll and put a picture of the food. Let's see if I can pull it up here easily. We'll take a look at that in our presentation. And so do a poll as my sample and then do a quiz at the end. So I'm going to save it. We'll get over to Nearpod. Again, if you have a second device, you could pull that up. The thing that's amazing and great about Nearpod is that it shows your presentation. So you can have students following along on their screen, and then you can be talking and they'll hear you over Zoom. This is updating what I have here. The time of life where internet is very valuable, and try to find creative ways to help students who may not have access to that.
So Mike, real quick, it looks like that code is not working.
Yeah, so I'm gonna put it live here.
Gotcha.
So I'll start a live presentation, and then that will generate a code for us to follow along with. So that's something you might be able to do at the right before class starts. This is the code we're going to put in now. So join.nearpod.com. And then that's something where it'll pace through. When I change the slides, it'll follow along on your device. There is a Nearpod app, which is easier for some students, especially in an elementary setting. They can open up the Nearpod app and put in the code. If they don't have that, they can still go to a website, type in join.nearpod.com, and then put in the code themselves. Nearpod is all letters, which makes it easier, and I don't believe it's case sensitive. So that's a little bit easier when students are trying to get into things. Can share a link with someone, put it into Google Classroom, email it out. We're going to do it there. So as I'm presenting, the code is still up in the corner. Those of you looking at our Zoom can see my teacher screen. We start off the presentation, looks how it did before, our lesson objectives, and our quiz. So I believe maybe you can fill me in if you're following along with this, Jess. Is that showing up on our codes now for people following along? Perfect.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay. Difference between teaching virtually and being in person. I can walk around and see we're working on it. And I'd especially recommend, as you're looking at presenting or converting lessons, start with things like this that maybe you have been teaching in person for a while or have even taught once. It can be easier thinking about the same R model. How can I replace this? How can I substitute what I would do in person? How can I adjust things? So we'll give a little bit of time to go through here. I'm going to move along so that we can finish up and make sure we have time for everything. And then it's moving the students along with me. I can go through and review those things. Then what are snacks? We'll go to our poll for that. I can get a report. I'm going to wait till we finish up with everything. Then choosing a snack, I can talk about a healthy snack, how we want it to be the main food, not have a lot of extra ingredients, not have a lot of added things. And then again, this is how I would in person have students raise their hand. Here, I'm showing the same picture and having students respond to it. I can see who's on, how people are following along. A lot of greens lets me know most people are getting this. Some reds means somebody missed a question. So as we're going through, as I'm teaching, I can follow along and see how my students are doing with it. We'll go to the quiz next. And there's a bunch of different kinds of questions that you can ask students. You can have them post comments, you can have them draw pictures, and some of those types of questions will even add into your activity as you're going through it. So you can discuss live in real time what they're adding, what they're thinking, what they've been learning from the lesson. So this is a little bit just kind of straight replacement of how I have been instructing in person. How can I convert that? And again, I can send this out to my students at the beginning of the week to have them work on it. If I have time in front of my students, then I can walk through this with them. As a PE teacher, anytime I get my students, I want to be able to move with them and give them some good instruction, some good movements to do. I'm excited to talk about body parts and muscles and that kind of content. So then some of the nutrition things I can pass along to this. You can pass out a bone lesson or muscle lesson and do it that way. I know we have a little bit of difference between number of people that were in here and the student and people that followed along. Just going slow. So we'll show quick what the student view would look like with that quiz. Not happy with me. Let's switch out of teacher to teacher view and then look to finish up here. So up at the top, I can go in and end the session. It'll end it for everyone. So then in a Zoom call, I would encourage everybody to come back to our Zoom call, not just stay in Nearpod or stay in their browser. And then, oh, go back. To the side, I can see reports. I'm actually going to go this way, go to my reports, or I could export it. You can also do reports from the side, and then it'll show you all of the lessons that you have. That's going to be a lot messier to try to sort through and get to the one that you need to. So clicking on those three dots is helpful. So here I can look through our students, look through the features and participation. A little bit confused why it's not showing answering with the quizzes. I think we went through a little bit faster than having the full time to finish everything, but you could definitely do that, especially with the student paced ones. It'll have that information as they finish. So again, you can track participation in that way with students. So we'll go back to our presentation now. We'll get our main feature up on here with Google Forms. Google Forms is embedded in Google Drive. You need to create a new Google form the same way you would a Google slide. It's usually under more options, a Google Doc. It can be great to collect information. I know a lot of the teachers in our district were sorting out how sites want to run PE. So a lot of our teachers have been reaching out to teachers. What time do you want me to come in? What do you want that time to look like? So they can send out a Google form, teachers can respond to it. Again, I collected a lot of information. I'll show some examples from students at the end of our lessons from the spring. I'd have them mark off our nutrition, our daily game or activity, the digital content, what they participated in, and then had just kind of some personal questions. What was something exciting for you? What was something that was challenging? So I could check in with them a little bit. I've used this as a pretest a different year instead of trying to do a Kahoot. Send this out, ask questions. You can create different kinds of questions. You can make it a self-grading quiz, which in my classes, I take the entire grade level out. So that's typically about 100 students in 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. Instead of paper and pencil, having 300 quizzes at the end of the day, we can take some time, do it on their iPads in a form and get that information, have it grade itself, and students can see that quickly. That takes years off my life to not have to try to go through all of those papers. So that's been invaluable. With quizzes, it's best to do multiple choice or true, false, or matching kind of questions. Anytime you get into open-ended questions, then it's harder for that to follow along with. Again, I've used Google Forms for signups, for track meets, signups for going into teachers' classrooms for different things. And it's also a big tool that I use for feedback from conference presentations I've done. I work with our induction team in the district. Every meeting, we try to check in. What questions do people still have about what we've been talking about? Are there people that we need to follow up with? So Google Forms are a great way to do that. Again, Matt Bassett has a lot of great tutorials. I'll share the link with you after we talk about a couple, but this is a sample I've done from a hockey pretest. Have students fill in their names, can put in as many teachers as they have so they don't misspell it. They don't put capital H for Harris or lower H for Harris, and then I have to try to line that up. Have vocabulary, can do matching, have them match up different words. This is what it looked like a lot of my weekly check-ins from students. So I didn't put all of the days. Students could check off the activities they participated in, how many minutes they got, how many days during the week they got 60 minutes of play, trying to go with that CDC guideline to get them moving. I'd love for students to follow along and participate. I think we had some great activities for that, but I want my students to be active, especially if I can't be there with them. Look for trends for what they're doing. So as I go into classrooms, I can talk about, hey, a lot of you I know are going for walks. Next time, maybe some scavenger hunt ideas. Try to see how many mailboxes you find, or look for a different color tree. And then what was something you learned as they were going through our nutrition lessons? What was something that might have been surprising to them? A highlight, I called it a star or a stare. Forget the amazing PE teacher from Twitter I got that from. But checking in, what was challenging? What was a highlight for you? What are they doing that I might not have come up with? Or if there's a Go Noodle dance they've been doing or a YouTube workout, is that something I could share? And any ideas they got. So there, throughout our time, I would change that up a little bit. We talked about goal setting one month. So I talked about what a goal could be for them, checked in on their progress with that. Again, for signups, we had do a track meet at one of my schools. So we can see, have them choose their grade, their teacher, and then do their events. We only want them to sign up for 3. Instead of having them each have a sticker or write their name on a list and end up on a bunch of different ones, this gives us a big list of names to start off with. It goes a lot faster. And then feedback again. So you can do a scale. Do you strongly disagree? strongly agree. I've seen teachers do this for the end of their year. What were topics that students liked? What were things they wanted to do? Feedback about different things. I've done that a couple times. I'm kind of nervous to give students that free rein. Sometimes I've been brave and tried to ask what they think of it. I'm trying to improve for myself. So again, here are some links from Matt Bassett, a playlist on YouTube that has a bunch of different examples. And the examples link is going to be a little bit more of a tutorial, kind of text driven, so you can get different ideas there. He was gracious to include that so we can spend a little bit more time with some of the other things. And then we're going to finish up with Quizizz. So Quizizz, again, is going to work very similar to Kahoot. I had heard of Kahoot a lot longer before I heard of Quizizz, but it does very similar things. It can be used for information gathering. You can use it as a pre or post test, check in, do a Quizizz during a lesson or during a unit to see what students know. There are pre-made quizzes available, so you can look up a topic that you're doing, especially nutrition things or some sports topics. There's usually a lot of things around. It's free. I haven't found anything that I've not been able to do at a free level. I'm not even sure if there is a level I could try to pay for. There's a ton of options for questions, but again, if you're running it, make sure you remind students to put appropriate names, and then make sure you're tracking that, especially if you're doing a live presentation. Again, one of the advantages with Quizizz is that you can send it out to students. So that's a little bit ahead. So Quizizz, you would run through the website. We'll get to where to join in just a minute, showing some of the back end things before we start. So again, we can search. My internet were faster, you would see suggestions, just like lots of websites. The end of our year last year, I asked some random questions to our PE teachers about different things from our meetings, how many people were exercising during them, how many people had different exercise equipment in the background or got haircuts or wearing hats. Here I can go ask different kinds of questions. Hopefully you learned at least what netball is, hopefully even more things about technology, but a chance to check in at the end. What did students learn from what we were talking about? We'll see a lot more different kinds of questions as we go through, and then we'll look at the report that it shows. So again, here I can assign as homework. On the presentation, again, is already a sample one. I believe with Quizizz, it's a little bit shorter. With Nearpod, you can put a student pace lesson that goes up for about 30 days. I think with this, the furthest it could go out was about 2 weeks. And so that's something, if you're interested to see what that looks like, you can do that at a later time, or we can go in here to play live. So again, I have some options for what I want to do. If you don't want students to have unlimited attempts, you can choose a number. If you choose a number, then they'll be required to log in. So that'll take a little bit more explaining to make sure they know how to use their district account for those things. If you do it as a test, it automatically requires them to log in. As a team, you can group them together in different ways. So if you have a different grade level you want to try to do, or different groupings that you're using in a health class, you can do that. We're going to stick with the classic, keep it unlimited so we don't have to log in. I can generate creative names, but I want to know how students performed on each of the questions. So I'm going to have them put in their own name. You can choose to show answers in the game or as they're going through it, or you have it just post at the end. You can have some different bonuses or change the length of time. Have the leaderboard like we saw on the other side. You can shuffle questions. So as I've used this as a more formal assessment tool at the end of a unit, I would do that. So Jimmy is sitting next to Katie and they don't have the same questions, but all I had to do was toggle this back and forth. that's encouraging them to do their own work. This one is fun because it's student paced. So as students answer questions, it'll keep moving on to the next one. With Kahoot, I had to be broadcasting it up front and click through for each of them. One of the things that my students really enjoy is the memes. So you guys will see that at the end. It'll show a little encouraging comment or prod you to do better. If you miss a question, you can turn that on or off and pick some different memes for it, different blocks for it. So we're going to continue, and it'll show our website to go to, joinmyquiz.com, and give you a code for it. And this is something several years ago I tried to have students do this, and the concept of going to a website and then putting in a code was pretty foreign to them. Around that time, I tried to use Google Classroom, and just this concept of type in the website, make sure you don't add too many Z's or are typing the website into your browser, not into a Google search, took the entire day to do, to get everybody in, get enough students ready to go, and do our pre-quiz before the lesson. With our nutrition lessons, I've tried to do this at the beginning. Let's take 5 minutes, see what you know. Maybe we can move through some things a little bit faster. And then at the end, measure learning. That day, I was only able to do the beginning part. So it's a pretty common way to get in for things. A lot of apps and websites are using, which is great because then students are familiar with it and understand that concept. I can look through on here, remove a player if they put something I didn't like. And it could just be that I have 16 Katies in my class. If they put Katie Unicorn, then I need to change it so that I can track their information better later on. Let a couple more people get on here. All right, see a lull, so we're gonna go ahead and start. And then again, on your device, it'll show the question and the answers. You'll answer it right there. Just like with Kahoot, the faster you answer, the more points you'll get. I'm gonna see if I can go through our video here. Oh, our panelists are working hard away with it. Just trying to see if anybody saw a funny meme and reacting to it. So I could show this up front, a leaderboard, how students are doing. I can look at specific questions. Our first one, we had a lot more people get it correct in the beginning of our lesson. Not many people have gotten to the 5th and 6th question. I can kind of track where they're at. It's nice that it's showing me the options on here, but not necessarily giving away answers. If this is what I chose to have up broadcasting. Some nice teacher feedback is that it's showing how long some of these questions are taking. A lot of you, especially our second time through some of these, are able to answer them pretty quickly. So that's a way we can measure, do they know it? Do they not know it as well? At the end, we have an open-ended question, so that's not showing red or green. It's just showing as people are answering it. With the fill in the blank, it's just a blank spot, so I found that I needed to put what students' options are, and then it gives them a correct one with that. If they put in something different, then it'll mark it incorrect. Hopefully, now that we spent a little bit of time talking about some of these different tools, you feel comfortable with some of them. You feel like you have a little better understanding of where you're going and how you can direct your students. This is a map of the Boundary Waters, a big wilderness area in northern Minnesota. Little shout out to where I'm from. Up at the top, we have 91% accuracy, 26 missed. I could sort my questions by accuracy. Go look in here. Everybody's finished up. especially with students, I wouldn't scroll all the way down this far presenting in front of them, but I could have my screen not presented, look through, see where everybody's at. I'm going to go ahead and end the game. We moved through pretty quickly. See if one or two of those last people can finish up their question. And again, a great thing about having a self-paced option is that you can present this at the beginning of the week. You could do a short 5-question practice during your class time and let students know how they should be performing on this, what it's going to be like, and then let them do it at their pace. You can ask some more challenging questions, some different things. I'm going to end the game so we can finish up and try to get to some questions some of you may had. Just like Kahoot, we're seeing how people did. Congratulations, Joel, Katie, and Brandon. Congratulations, class. Some amazing accuracy. Lots of people officially stamped mastered. Then I can look at accuracy. Our toughest question was still the first one about netball. Longest question, what is one thing? Looking at what people have learned. You can do an overview of the questions, how people did on each one, or looking at the questions as a whole. Getting that result, and we can talk through what was something we missed, what were things that were challenging. I can download the results. If I had a lot more questions, I can move over for it. And this then will exit. So again, there's a student-paced one in our presentation. You'd be able to look at that later on if you're interested. We have the code here for it. One last closing comment before we get to our questions is keep in mind that anytime we're trying to incorporate something new, it's about progress over perfection. I love trying to get things right, was tinkering a lot with the presentation, annoyed about different parts of my slides I wanted to delete or wish I would have changed around, but we're learning this. I read a recent study recently that it takes about 100 hours or at least 50 hours to go from attending a training for teachers, practicing it, trying to integrate it, and then really having it be something that they're comfortable with. So a lot of you are going to get those hours in very quickly, but with all of this stuff, especially that we're doing right now, have grace for yourself and be patient. We're learning and adapting to new things. So learn from your mistakes, just like we do with our students. I love PE and just the mental skills that we can teach students that it's okay to make mistakes. People get paid a lot of money to throw a football in the right spot, and they don't throw it in the right spot every time. We practice and adjust and learn to make better choices or do it the way we want to. If you guys haven't been following along, make sure you check out the YouTube channel to see some of the other presentations. There's been some really cool ones I'm planning to go back to look at. Once we get into our hybrid system, we're going to be integrating Google Classroom. I'm definitely going to be getting some tips from there. I've heard amazing things about Kate Cox's presentation. So all those things are up on the YouTube channel. Again, the links for Google Forms and my presentation. If you have any questions for me, you can reach out on Twitter or email me. And just remember, little by little, even if there's some tears involved, just try, keep going, making that progress.
Mike,
So
there
I'll
are
leave
some
that up.
questions.
Yeah.
Sorry, there are some questions in the Q&A if you want to look at that.
Yeah.
And then we have some more in the chat.
My Q&A isn't coming up when I click on it. There it is. Okay, so first, Nearpod, you have to open a new window for the presentation. Is that the same thing with Pear Deck with all interactive slides? I'm not as familiar with Pear Deck, but I believe it would be the same. Even with Quizizz, just once you try to do something, I think students have to open something else up. So again, with Nearpod, I think it's great because you can push them along, and especially if you're having questions or ways to interact along the way, you're able to see that, but then it does take the picture off of the Zoom feed that they're doing. So again, I don't know Pear Deck that well, so that would be my best answer for this. Can you hide, another question, can you not hide names in this one? I'm not sure which that was from. In Nearpod, it wouldn't show names that students have on there. It would just paste it through for themselves. With Quizizz, you could choose not to have the leaderboard posted, if that's what you're talking about, or you could choose just creative names. It'll self-populate those ones so that they're not putting in their name specifically. I see you followed up with that, Kristen. Does that answer your question with it? If there's anything you want to clarify, go ahead and do that as you are. Roger asked if I prefer Kahoot or Quizizz. I would 1000% recommend Quizizz because I have a lot more options as a teacher for different kinds of questions. I was able to have pictures be the answer, which might be helpful for some of my younger students, or I can have the picture be up at the top. I'm able to, just have a lot more different kinds of questions, and I like not paying for things. So Quizizz gives you a lot more with that before you have to start paying for stuff. So I would highly recommend that. If you have the choice for one, I almost didn't include Kahoot, but I know there are some districts that do pay for that and provide it. And so if that's your district and you have more of those tools, I think it would be great to use. If you're choosing one to use for yourself, then Quizizz being free is amazing. I highly recommend that. Are there any other questions for us to talk about?
David in the chat asked, can you import scores into Google Classrooms from Nearpod?
I haven't put any Nearpod lessons into Google Classroom myself. I just learned about that in our district professional development. I've mostly done Nearpod lessons as just instruction and haven't had some of the check-ins and questions along the way, which I'd especially do right now for a student-paced lesson. So adding that into Classroom is something new I've seen. I imagine if you made it an assignment, anything that you assign, you should be able to go through and put in your own scores for. So it might be a little bit more tedious than just copying a report over, but you should be able to put that in. I think this is from David too. He asked, do I grade students? In our district, elementary students get a citizenship grade. So a lot of that is based on participation. If I were able to do a 1, 2, 3, 4 ABCD grade, then personally I would do a lot more things, checking in and scores and holding percentages. But at this point, it's more about content with big classes and trying to get students moving and being active than necessarily doing the grades. Was there anything else from the chat?
Not that I see.
Cool. Then I think we're pretty close to our time. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be here. And again, like Patty said at the beginning, CAPERD is an amazing organization and runs from people and being members with it. Again, I like free things, so I've been hesitant to do that, but seeing the value that they bring to me as an educator to learn and get opportunities like this to meet with other people, get ideas from other people. They put out some amazing advocacy pieces and resources with reopening and stuff over the summer. So it's a great organization. So with that, I'll hand things back over to whoever ends. But again, thank you so much for being here and participating, committing to your learning. I wish you all the best of luck with teaching and encourage you to have some balance too and enjoy your families and all this too and not be consumed by the teaching.
Thank you, Mike. Patty, do you have anything you want to
I
add
just
to
want
that?
to thank Mike for a great presentation. Lots of good feedback that we've been getting about it, and we are anxious to see all the continuing feedback from YouTube. Want to remind everybody that tomorrow night, Stephanie Sandina will be on at 5 o'clock doing Flipgrid. And then Amanda Stenick will be joining us at 4:30 on Sunday. Please don't miss those two upcoming events, and more to come after that. You'll be hearing more about it as we send it out. Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.